Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of One Take because life has no rehearsal. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled. Today is a great day. Um, Technically speaking, or formally speaking, Jonathan Harries from South Africa, that's why the accent, you'll hear in a second, is the ex global creative director of Food Court and Building, one of my alma maters, who's now transformed himself into a best-selling author. I mean, he writes books, he sells them. He's a real, honest-to-goodness author. There's one story that I need to say because Jonathan knows this. One day in a worldwide meeting at FCB, we were like, I don't know how many people, like maybe 150, 180, that's it. We had another guy who was a global creative director. He presented, I don't even remember the guy's name, but Jonathan came in and said, guys, he was working on the Johnson Wax account. And he said, guys, I did something. Our clients evaluate our creative through something called the ARF, I think it was, the Advertising Research Foundation, which had created some guidelines. And, as a result, there's some tension there. So I went in, I studied what the element was. I now know how to create gaming the system so that it will score high and at the same time be creative, and this will eliminate a lot of tension. And I remember I was sitting with some of the guys from Latin America and said, shit, that guy is going to be the new global creative director. I mean, you can just see it. That was a smart thing to do, and at the same time it shows conscience of the client, it is client service, and at the same time you don't want to sacrifice the creative. And that's Jonathan. Creative, at the same time, brilliant. So, Jonathan, welcome. I know I'm not supposed to say worldwide author, but you're there. So let's begin with the obvious. What changed? What was that moment when you said, "I'm done with this. I'm going to do that"? And how did you actually manage to become like an author that lives from being an author?
Well, so I don't know if you remember when FCB merged with Draft. I can't even remember the dates anymore, but there was a merger with
I wasn't in
Draft.
anymore, but yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that.
and that went okay for a while. And then it got pretty tense between probably the people who were the FCB people and the Draft people. And ultimately, I got sort of pushed out um, to the colonies, so to speak. They didn't want me in the US anymore, so they moved me first to London for a bit, and then to Germany, to Hamburg, where I worked on Bayersdorf. And it was supposed to end at a certain point, and I was supposed to come back to the US and basically leave the company. And it just so happened that at that particular point when I came back, that the guys who were running Draft were sort of eliminated, let's put it that way, or asked to leave, whatever happened, I don't even remember. And I was sort of planning my future, which I had no idea what I was going to be. And IPG employed a guy called Carter Murray as the new CEO. He came back and he gave me a call and he said, look, I've been asking around and I think you probably know the agency better than anyone. You certainly have, a certain amount of respect from the people here and the clients. And I would love you to come in and be my partner, the global creative director. And your only job is to sort of make the agency as creative as possible when it can, do really good work, hire good people. The difference was I was probably in my late 50s, maybe even about to turn 60, and Carter was 37. So I came in, I was like the old guy, and he was this young guy full of, piss and vinegar and energy and brilliant guy, and everyone loved him. He just, he took the agency and he did a great thing with it. And I just loved working with the guy. And we worked together with me as global creative director. And we did, we started winning at Cannes, and we had some brilliant people that we hired. And I mean, I think that's the key in being a good creative director, is hire better people than you. So we had the people, and eventually I said to him, Carter, I get to a point where I just can't keep up with you. I mean, as much as I'd love to think I can, I can't. So I think we should look for a new global creative director, someone who's more your age and your energy. So he was, he was very open to it, and he said to me, "Well, you stay on for as long as you like and become chairman of the company." So we looked around, and it took 2 years, I think, to find Susan Cradle, who came in, and I think she's still the global creative director, but I may be wrong, which goes to show how much attention I pay to advertising. But she was great. She came in, she did a fantastic job, and my job as chairman basically was just travel around and, you know, go to openings of office, and really it wasn't a particularly stressful job. It was kind of nice. And I could have stayed on, and I suddenly realized, we got to a point where we had to like cut back on things. And I said to Carter, I'm earning a relatively big salary, which is fantastic, but you're getting rid of young people who, I think will be a bigger contribution to the agency than I am at this stage. I mean, as much as I love my job, I don't think I'm contributing as much as possible. And it wasn't just trying to be generous, believe me. I was really like thinking about writing. I'd started writing one of my books, and I just wanted time to really devote to it. So, and he was very open to that. So the day I turned 65, which was now will be 8 years in December. I'm going to be 73, I guess. I said to him, "This is it. I can now, retire. I can get Medicare or whatever. Hopefully, still with Trump around." But and I said, "I think it's time." And he was really open to it, and said to me, "As long as you," and Susan agreed, "as long as I could come to creative meetings keep going to creative meetings every year when they had them, he would be very open to that." And that was that moment of suddenly waking up one morning and realizing I'm not going to compete with somebody this age, and the business is starting to get to a point where I don't really understand a lot of what's going on. And to be honest, I don't care to understand. I'm not that keen to keep pushing myself to understand. I'd rather do something I really love, and that's writing, which I've done my whole life. So that was the moment. That's kind of a bit of a convoluted moment, I have to say. But it was really a wake up in the morning moment, look in the mirror and go like, you're an old guy. You're not 37 like he is. So that was the key for me.
Wow. Yeah, and it was very generous on your part also to say, I'll walk away voluntarily. You must have been one of the few people to, walk away that way. Most of us were eliminated at some point through some of the mergers and stuff.
Yeah, well,
So,
they were. I mean, I was going to be, but I had a fantastic friend in South Africa who I'm still friendly with. Um, he was the CFO of actually of FCB at some point in South Africa, and he used to have this incredible wine cellar that he used to have parties at every Friday night. He'd invite people in, and he had big hams hanging, and it was a fantastic party. And at 10:30, he would like stop the party, take everyone's drinks away, put the wine away, and he had what he called the rule of 10:30, which was after 10:30 nothing is going to get better. People will get drunk, and that for me that was my 10:30 moment, that wake up call, you know.
Oh wow. I should remember that because I go to a lot of dive bars and listen to metal bands and stuff. 10:30 is the beginning.
Yeah,
So yeah, and but it tends to get out of hand really fast.
but that's just
So,
but it's a point. It's like everybody has a point where you got to realize,
yes,
it's time to move on.
absolutely. Um, one of the current themes, or one of the most common themes that I run across whenever I talk to advertising people, and I've talked to a lot of people by now. This is, I guess, episode 48 or something like that. So
Wow.
we've talked to a lot of people, but everybody in the advertising industry has sort of like a theme. Like the industry changed irremediably when it went from, as Jim Moore just called it, TV and print to digital. I think Irving, a very good friend of mine who used to be also one of the worldwide guys at YNR, he called it, I think, even more narrowly when he said, we in the industry went from advertising to programmatic. We were no longer buying media, and he was a media guy. We are buying an audience. And that
Yeah.
changed the entire mindset actually of the advertising agencies. What do you think changed in the industry that was like almost impossible to predict?
I don't know that I can give you a definitive answer there because I think my exit was over a period of time when I mean, I think that business has always changed. My father-in-law, who used to be head of JWT in the sort of Mad Men era, when I was playing golf once with him, and he said, "How's the business?" And he was like, I don't know how old he was, maybe in his late 70s or something. And I said, it's changing dramatically. We're no longer print, it's digital, etc., whatever it was. And he said, well, we when I started, it was like radio and TV and print, and then suddenly a whole bunch of other things changed. We had in-store marketing, and he went through a litany of stuff. And I realized, like, it's always changing. I mean, I think, you know, obviously the world has changed at an ever increasing pace once once technology just really started running our lives. And but what I found for me was going to some of the creative meetings after I'd retired and listening to these young creative guys who were great, just talking about what they were doing, and it just seemed so far from advertising. um, and so I just didn't really get anymore what the hell they were doing, and I realized I couldn't make any contribution to what they were doing other than say you got to focus on the idea, because I think the idea is still the key to everything, no matter what form advertising takes. Um,
I,
but
I, I
but
think the idea, yes, is key. Um, I'm not a very big fan, let's say, of authenticity itself.
right,
I'm a big fan of relevance.
yeah,
If something is relevant to you, you're probably going to look at it. Authentic, and I've given this example in a few conferences where if you can think of a Fender Stratocaster guitar, those things are as authentic as they come. I mean, like the Fender Stratocaster is an icon, right?
yeah,
So you know it, you're aware of it. It is not unaffordable. I mean, an expensive Stratocaster costs $1,500. $1,500 doesn't begin to buy some of the lenses that I own as a photographer, right? So it's doable. You can do it, but you wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't buy it. It isn't relevant to our lives. But
yeah,
I think that the idea overall, yes, and I am bothered, me personally. If somebody were to ask me the question of what changed, I think the fragmentation of the industry has been unusual, to say the least. From having one idea, if you remember, like, I don't know, Johnson Wax or Nabisco, any of those, like the products had an idea behind it. Then the idea was translated into, different messages for different people. So you wouldn't have the same message for, I don't know, a young woman who's working at a store that you would have for a young woman who is just married, had a kid. Completely different.
Mm.
But it was solid. It was a coherent thing, and I noticed, or I've seen it because I've participated in it, where everything has been fragmented into nano little fragments. So now you have one person who's doing SEO, and of course SEO is done X, Y, or Z ways, completely different than, let's say, influencers, and then you do PPC, the pay per click. So there's no longer an idea behind it. There's more a you know results orientation. And I often wonder, does a client, when a client follows that path, does a client leave a lot of money on the table by getting the low hanging fruits versus an idea, a big idea? You're an idea guy. Creatives are idea guys. What do you think of that fragmentation? If you think about it.
Well, to be honest, I don't. As I said to you, I don't. I do not think about advertising at all anymore. Just because, again, you asked me the definitive moment. In that moment, I really realized I had no interest in what it was great, and I enjoyed it, and I did well out of it. But I honestly, I don't know. But I think I would give you a terrible answer and ramble more than I'm rambling at the moment.
So we had an employee at FCB Colombia called Cristina Giraldo. You might
Yeah,
remember her. Um,
I do
when I-
actually. I think I'm
yeah,
still friends with her on Facebook.
yeah, no, she's a great person. But at some point, she left the agency, and her phrase was, "I fell out of love."
Yeah. Well,
So yeah,
I see that. Yeah. I I don't know if it was love for me. It wasn't even that. It was just time to move on. Now,
right.
you asked about age, and that is, I think one of the great secrets in life, well, certainly for me, so maybe it's not a secret, maybe it's just a personal belief, is you just have to know when to quit. That rule of 10 and a half. I think that's when you're happiest. If you keep trying to be relevant, or you keep trying to understand what people half your age do. Maybe that's difficult. I'm not saying you should give up and not you know try and be creative. I mean, I think I'm being as creative, if not more creative, than I've ever been, and I'm sure you're doing your podcast. You're being as creative as you ever were when you were in media. I mean,
Yeah,
that would be my opinion
it's a
of what you're
really,
doing.
it's a totally valid point for sure. So how is it being an author? You like it?
I do like it. I actually like it more than anything else I've ever done. I write. I've got 10 books that are published. I have two that are in the middle of being edited. One is actually just finished being edited, and I don't know if you remember. Do you remember Luis Diaz from Portugal?
No.
He was the creative director there. So he's been a great friend, and he's designed all my book covers. So he and I are just going back and forth on the latest one, and then I have another one. So I'll hopefully by certainly the end of this year, I'll have 13 books published in 8 years, which is great. And I love they're all sort of, I would say 90% of them are historically based books. So the research into history, which is another passion of mine, is fantastic. So it's a great um, creative, or it's a great way to be creative and not to worry about it. There's no pressure on it. I mean, to be honest, if I don't sell any books, it doesn't make any difference in my life. I donate all the money I make from books to various animal charities. So that's the only thing. I don't actually, I'm not trying to. Most authors who who rely on sales are probably starving. So I'm not worrying about trying to sell as much as possible. I'm just worried about, and I just love writing more than
Oh,
anything
that's
else.
great. By the way, give me your website. We'll do a plug for you at the end of the podcast.
Okay, so it's Jonathan Harries Inc. INK. Now, again, just so one word, but all the books are up there. To be honest, I haven't even looked at the website. I mean, my agent looks at it, but I should be updating it and putting more stuff up, and I haven't. But all the books are up there.
Ah, yeah. Well, we'll plug it, and then somebody buys
Well,
it. You can
thank you.
donate
That's very
the money
nice of
to an
you.
animal charity. So that's
Yeah.
great. And then, of course, the question that I always ask at the end, even though I can sense it's going to be a different answer. Like if you were advising a CEO who's looking to hire somebody, and the CEO has, different candidates. Some of them are 30 years old, 40, somebody 60. What do you say is a big advantage of an older worker?
For an older person. Well, the obvious answer is experience.
Right.
And I do think that's critical. And I do think, you know, experience and maturity brings a certain calmness to a company. And a lot of the companies that I've worked with lack the calmness. They're so full of people all fighting with each other and trying to, get to the top and trying to. And I think an older person allows you to just sort of take a deep breath and and look at things through different eyes, not of competing eyes or fighting eyes or anything like that. Just of so I think that's an important part of stuff. I don't think that's the only thing though. So uh, I think I think having an older person there for that aspect of it is critical. But again, there's all sorts of aspects to whatever the job may be. But I do
Sure.
think calmness is something that I've noticed in a lot of companies. I was asked a few years ago by a friend of mine who runs a giant insurance company, you know, publicly traded company. They had just got rid of their CMO, and he asked me if I would come in, sort of obviously on a temporary basis, just to help them while they looked for the new CMO. And I came in, and their internal advertising department, not the ones doing the ads, were just like it was full of people trying to stab each other in the back, and I could see that, and it just like worried me. And I said to him, I worry that you've got people in here who, are so keen to become stars that they will, jump over anyone they can and push anyone they can. And you really need to have someone who, who can see that and isn't worried about, making it to the top.
Right.
And he's a very smart person, and he listened, and I think he brought in a very clever person to do it. And I've no idea whatever happened to all the people in the department fighting, but I think the company is still doing really good advertising and doing well. So obviously he brought in the right person, but it wasn't like a very young person. It was somebody with a certain amount of maturity and ability to try and bring peace and tranquility to the company.
No, great. Well, Jonathan, it's been a real pleasure connecting again with you. Uh, I wish you the best. I envy
You
your
too,
life.
Marcelo.
And
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Well,
See you around
thank
there.
you. I
Bye
appreciate
bye.
it. Bye.
Bye bye.